Yes, sir. Speak loudly.
I will.
State your name and address for the record, please.
I am the interim town manager, the less than Honorable Leonard Barefoot, and I'm here. My purpose today, as town manager and budget officer for the town of Nashville, is my responsibility to present you a budget. Must be presented to you prior to June 1st. I'll just remind you that first off, we have some slides for the general public to look at, but I think it'll be easier for you to follow along, and if you choose to. I will say this about the index. The format is similar to what you're used to in your agenda and in your agenda packages. Tab 1 is the budget, my budget message, which I'll go through in summary. Tab 2 is the proposed fiscal year budget ordinance, which is the most important document that you're required by law to adopt. Hopefully you'll adopt it in some fashion, and that has to be done before July or the end of June 30th. We have a tentative schedule, agreed to a tentative schedule to present the budget to you all at this meeting tonight. We will advertise the public hearing for May 29th, which is also the agenda meeting. It is possible we can have as many budget workshops as you desire between now and then. You don't have to adopt the budget until the end of June, but we don't think that'll be necessary. You can adopt it as early as the conclusion of the public hearing on the 29th. And of course, as we all know, the new manager will be here on June 4th, first meeting in June, but you could adopt it then as well. Just briefly, the index is divided in, I think, 6 sections, broad sections. I've mentioned the first 2. Tab 3 is the budget process. It's just legal, it's not in legal terms, but it explains the process that you're required to go through. The meat of the budget is in items 4, or tab 4. It has the revenue summaries and some background support information for what we're recommending, expenditure summaries. We actually have individual listings of each department within the general fund and the enterprise fund. Also the municipal service district. There's a section on human resources summary. It has every position listed by salary. Some other information, and then tab 5 is the capital improvements plan. Tab 6 is the line item detail. In summary, my proposed budget contains no increase in taxes. The current rate of 58 cents is my recommendation that it not change. There are nominal fee increases proposed for some zoning fees in the planning department and the sanitation for recycling and sanitation or tipping fees. Those can be found on page 23, and the following pages after that has the actual listing of the proposed fees, which many of them are current. There are 4 pages. If you go through those, you'll see the highlighted ones that we're increasing in red, and they're in 2 parts. The sanitation fee is being recommended to go from $15.98 to $18.50. That's a 15% increase. It's a result of the 60 cents bin charge that you all were made aware of back in March, and you chose not to pass it on to the citizens, but it needs to be done. We're recommending it be done going forward. There's also an increase in the landfill tipping fees, so together we're recommending a 15% increase in the sanitation fee. The recommended appropriation from the general fund is minimal. It's $120,000. It's for the express purpose of buying a used 100-foot ladder platform fire truck, which we expect to acquire in early 2020 in the calendar year. I'm always pleased to note the strength of the town's financial position. You should be complimented for that. It's exhibited in the general fund balance mentioned above. The latest audited unassigned fund balance of June 30 of 2018, which you can find on page 28, and a history of that, is was $4,294,580 for almost 83% of total expenditures. That is, I don't want to have that list. How much is our peers or?
Our peer group is at about 73%, and all municipalities statewide are right at 45%. So you have a very strong fund balance.
And of course, the best measure is our peer group, because that all depends on the size of your budget. One significant change to our budget process involves the proper cost allocation between the two major funds, the general fund and the enterprise fund. Interim town manager Pete Conant initiated an analysis of the contribution being made between the enterprise fund to the general fund to properly account for the actual cost associated with operating that fund. That information summary is on page 62. But based on his analysis, which I agree with, I'm recommending the contribution from the enterprise fund to the general fund be increased from $85,000 at 307 to $152,000. And again, the summary of the logic behind that recommendation can be found on page 62. I also would recommend a second step. He recommends the second step in next year's budget to do one additional one to get the cost allocation to what it should be. The total budget, recommended budget for the upcoming year is $10,346,004. You have a chart that shows you the $6 million plus in the general fund, which is of course the largest fund. The municipal service district is shown in the enterprise fund. Those are the three you operate through. And then there are two capital reserve funds that are listed in that total. I'll take you now through some non-departmental information, and I'll begin with the personnel. Currently we have 64 full-time employees. We do have a number of part-time employees, and some are seasonal and some are part-time year-round. The total number of full-time employees does not change in the proposed budget. We do recommend one new position for the library and one to be deleted in the finance department. So they actually counter each other. The impact of the position recommended in the library is offset by a reduction of 1,000 hours of part-time funding found there. So we're taking one part of some part-time money, adding to it, and making one of those positions full-time. Funds for part-time employment in the finance department has been budgeted to replace the deleted full-time position. At this time, those funds will not be used until an assessment of need has been concluded. Based on the changes in that department over the past year or more, this review, we believe, is prudent and should be finalized by the end of summer. So essentially what's going to happen is when Melanie is no longer with us, she will have completed her analysis and determined how the duties should be divided among this part-time person. You have a lot of detail regarding employees, where they're assigned, salary, benefits, etc., beginning in the expenditure summary, beginning on page 31. On pages 31 through 52, for every department, there's detailed information. It gives you the approved number of positions, the service description of what that department does, accomplishments, funding levels, significant changes year to year. There's one of those for every department. On page 53 is additional change in benefits information that will help you understand, why some of the costs have gone up, or retirement costs or contribution to retirement as were mandated by the state to do that for our retirement program. Moving over to our employee benefits and health care, we will continue to get our dental, vision, and life from the League's Municipal Insurance Trust. There's no significant increase in that. I think it's maybe $200 or $300 at most. The medical insurance, which is provided through the state health plan, they've not given us any information, but the historical experience level of increases have averaged around 4 to 5%. So we're recommending budget. We've included in our proposed budget 5% to take care of that cost whenever we find out exactly what it's going to be. I'm recommending that the recommended budget includes funds to extend a 1.5% cost of living adjustment to each full-time employee, and it would be effective, if approved, beginning with the payroll period that starts July 2nd. And it will be important that if you agree, when you adopt the budget, you would make sure that's stated so that it's clear that that's when it would become effective. This adjustment will result in a cost of $42,960 in the general fund and $6,208 to the enterprise fund for that benefit. And the COLA is based on a 12-month consumer price index for the southern region, and that data is provided to you on page 59. In 2017, the town completed a salary study for its workforce. Due to the turnover that's been experienced during the past 2 years, myself and Lou, our HR director, undertook a current year market analysis or assessment, updating those results to reflect current market conditions. It is our recommendation that the town review all positions every other year to ensure market compliance. This year, the review of the public safety position were conducted. Next year, the review of the balance of our positions, non-public officials, non-public safety positions, will be conducted with results being brought forward in that budget cycle. Funding to implement the results of this year's review is included in the budget. The cost to implement across the public safety department will be $78,500. And funding equal to that amount and the COLA are both found in the respective general fund and enterprise fund in the non-departmental cost center. It is in a lump sum, and we did it that way in the event that if you don't approve it, it can be taken out rather than going through it up front and parceling it out for each individual employee. So you'll see those as lump sums when you look at those cost centers. Moving on to capital outlay. Capital outlay for the general fund includes several items that are part of the long-range capital plan. We will continue, as you've done in years past, to budget $6,200 for future HVAC replacement. Roof work and parking for improvements are included in the public building budget, along with HVAC replacement of the unit at the recreation center. In the police department, funding is recommended for 3 additional police cars and requisite lights, sirens, and radio. In the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department, funds are included for the Glover playground equipment or project and the purchase of bleachers. Total cost of these are $110,000, and they are in accordance with the capital projects replacement plan. All capital outlay is accounted for in the budget without the need for installment financing. Detailed information regarding planned capital outlay in the budget and the status of the capital reserve fund begins on page 63.
Page what? 63.
Page 63. General fund highlights. The general fund provides funding for the operation of all departments except those associated with the municipal service district or the enterprise fund, which is essentially water and sewer. The general fund has 16 functions. With anticipated operation scheduled to total $6,002,004 for the upcoming year. General fund revenues, there's a summary of those shown on page 16. And when you look at those, you'll see increases in the ad valorem tax. You'll see some increase in the ancillary taxes, sales tax, etc. And we think that speaks well for what's going on in the town. The town may not be growing it rapidly, but it's growing, and it's growing in two ways. It's growing some internally within the corporate limits, and it's some maybe at a greater pace in the Gully Fire District. I don't have housing data or housing start data, but I do have included in our budget a house count recently conducted by members of our fire department, taken during a training exercise they were performing. And that data, which includes the town, and one chart the town, one chart the gully, and then one town combined. And you can look at that, and if you'll study it, it begins on page 20. It'll give you an idea of the growth that is occurring outside the town. And if you note, there's one chart that shows ad valorem tax base between the gully and the town. And the Gully Fire District is actually larger in size and valuation than the town of Nashville. It's not a great deal larger, but it is larger. The difference is at least partially attributable to the town's limited ability to annex property, which is adjacent or near the town's corporate limits. The growth in the Gully Fire District does, however, contribute to increased sales and other tax revenue resulting from an increase in commercial development here in the town of Nashville. We see that growth continuing in the future. The downside to be noted, though, is the continued pressure to serve such a large area with adequate fire protection, because we are responsible for the Gully District as well. Figure 1 is on the following page. It gives you a breakdown of the broad revenue streams of the general fund, or the general fund that the town of Nashville projects to receive in the next year. And again, as you can see, at 41% of revenue is ad valorem tax. The second is unrestricted general governmental taxes and other income. That summary is on page 29. I'd also ask you to note that the expenditure summary on page 30, that the finance department has been split from administration to provide greater clarity. I've never seen it done where finance was in all administration cost centers. Non-departmental includes the necessary funds, as I've mentioned, to fund the COLA described above, the pay plan. Recreation includes funding for the Glover. This is in the non-departmental. The recreation includes funding for the Glover Park playground remodel. Administration includes additional funding for salaries and benefits for the new manager position. Public building includes funding from numerous capital projects, and the fire includes funding for the purpose of used trucks. What I meant to be referencing there is those are the ones who you'll see the greater increases in funding from the current year. Figure 2 gives a breakdown of general fund expenditures by category. And I should note that, not surprisingly, the public safety expenditures for police and fire represent 40%, 17 and 23% respectively of the total expenditures of the general fund. I'll move on to general fund highlights. Nashville's enterprise fund is for the operation of the department associated with water and sewer utilities. Anticipated operations are scheduled to total $4,018,000 in the upcoming year. We anticipate no increase in our charge for services provided to us by the city of Rocky Mount. A summary of enterprise fund revenues is shown on page 16. The fund's greatest source of revenue clearly is the sale of water and accompanying provision of sewer services to our customers. Since we essentially retail water and sewer services to our customers, which are basically wholesale to us by the city of Rocky Mount, our challenge is to maximize efficiencies on our side of the operation to ensure the greatest return on investment. I think we've done a pretty good job in that endeavor, but we must continue to make that efficiency a priority. And I've seen that in other places I've worked where you're getting your water and sewer service from another utility. You need to keep I&I down because every drop of water that comes through that you don't get paid for is a bane on your operation. Figure 3, which follows, gives a breakdown of the revenue stream the town of Nashville is receiving in this enterprise fund. And as you can see, 97% is service revenue, and that is from the sale of water and sewer. The same information that I mentioned earlier for each of the general fund departments that began on page 31, the same for the enterprise fund begins on 48. And it gives you a breakdown on position, what they do, what their level of funding is, et cetera. There are two capital expenditures in the enterprise fund. One is $78,000 for rehabilitation of the sewer outfall line leading from Nash Correctional Facility back into town, with the major benefit of this project being to reduce inflow and infiltration, I&I, as I mentioned earlier, that's so important to us. And there's also $40,000 proposed for a study to perform an inventory of our sewer lines to help with planning for future rehabilitation and improvements. Figure 4, which follows, gives a breakdown of expenditures by the department, by the enterprise fund. And you can note that the largest two categories of expenditures are services to our citizens through the provision of water, 30% of the fund, and sewer, 55% of the fund. Our third and smallest fund is the municipal. The chart's on the next page that I just referred to. The smallest, moving on to our smallest fund, is the municipal service district you all created, I think, 2 years ago. You've had 1 year of revenue derived from that. There's a 10-cent tax per $100 valuation is assessed. The current reported valuation is $31,325,000, and at our collection rate of 98.1%, we expect it to yield $32,000 during the next fiscal year. A summary of that revenue is shown on page 16 as well. You should note that the council has the prerogative to appropriate any additional funds which goes unspent during the current fiscal year, which would thereby lapse into the municipal sewer district fund balance, and that, of course, is restricted. That is restricted funds. Debt service. In addition to the town's strong position in the general fund balance, it also lays claim to the town having zero debt in that fund, and that's an achievement not often found among local governments. As a result, there's no debt service payments in the general fund. There are only 2 loans remaining outstanding at this time, and they are both in the enterprise fund. One is a sewer jet truck, which will have a fiscal year beginning principal balance of right at $184,000, with a payoff date of June 30, 2024. The other is an interest-free loan on a bypass pump at a cost of $9,900 per year until June of 22. In conclusion, the adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget will likely coincide with the formal swearing in of a new town manager and hopefully the beginning of a new era of prosperity for the citizens of Nashville and Nash County. Having now served for a second time in an interim role as town manager here in Nashville, I feel I have gained an even better perspective of what this community is all about and where it's headed. It has been said that the town has been in flux for over a year now. If so, I see flux as good. The work, I got the wrong one. I'll repeat that part. It has been said that the town has been in flux for over a year now. If so, I see flux as good. It has given us the opportunity to review and thereby significantly improve any number of the town's operations and procedures. Credit for those improvements go to many, including Interim Finance Director Melanie Bryan and her staff, part-time retirees Lynn Hobbs, Patricia Holloman, and Sandra Griffin, former interim town manager Pete Conant, and others. Each brought much-needed experience and maturity to key leadership positions within the town's governmental structure, and I thank each of them for their efforts to get us to this point. I also thank the town council for their efforts during not just one, but two manager searches to select the right person to lead the town forward. Our incoming town manager, Randy Lansing, brings a level of experience and maturity to the town that I believe will prove to be beneficial for years to come. I am confident that under his leadership, great things will happen here in the town of Nashville. I'll be watching from the sidelines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any
I'll be
questions for Leonard?
I have a question.
Sure.
Our budget this year is a full million more than it was last year. I'm looking at our budget from last year. It's kind of startling to see us to go from $9,040,741 to $10 million.
That's only 600,000.
Pardon?
It's only 600,000.
10.3.
It's more than that.
What's the number?
It's 9 million to 10.3.
9 million what?
9,040,000.
9 million to 40. Okay, we've gone up a million, yeah, from somewhere. In something.
That's a lot of money. That's a big jump.
Yeah, we
You have
collected.
to remember, part of that is attributable to your capital reserve funds, because we're actually budgeting those this year, because you are using part of that money that you've been setting aside to pay for projects that are in this budget, and you're also moving money from the general fund and the water and sewer fund into that. So those numbers are part of your this year budget, but were not included in the charts and stuff that you had last year. This year, we are fully reflecting every transaction, not only in funds 10, 20, and 30, which is general, MSD, and water and sewer, but also 41 and 43, which are your two capital reserve funds. And that is part of your, what appears to be an increase, because you're moving money from 10 to capital reserve, and then from capital reserve back to fund 10, which you have to do from an accounting perspective, because you've been sliding that money over every year. This year you've got projects, so you got to slide some of it back so that you can pay for the projects, but you're also at the same time saving for projects that are in the future. So you've got some accounting going back and forth that's not growth as much as the way you have to account for it in order to use your savings for a current project and put some savings over for those future projects. You'd be better served when you look at pure increase to look at it on a fund by fund level. So your general fund right now has a 5.78 or 5.736, so 5,700,000 budget at the end of March, and it goes to 6 million at July 1. So that's actually, a $260,000 increase, of which that covers your COLA, it covers your pay plan implementation if you choose to do it. That includes $120,000 for a fire truck. Those three items right there amount for that increase from 5.7 to $6 million.
But can you see how startling that is when we see the budget for the first time?
But again, it's not startling if you look at it in pieces and understand what the pieces are, because you haven't raised a rate to cover that, you haven't raised a tax rate to cover it, you are covering it within your growth. So you're improving your benefits to your employees, you're improving your services to your employees at no cost to the citizens. You're using your normal growth in your budget to fund improvements within your budget.
So I guess last year we didn't need that 2-cent tax increase.
No, because you're using it to pay for costs.
I have another question. With our funds, the stormwater fees we're collecting, did we not have a separate fund for that, or was it just running in
That
the general
stormwater
fund?
fee is inside of your general fund.
Goes in the general fund?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I thought we'd separated that out, but.
It's a department, but it's not, but it's inside of the general fund. It's one of the departments inside of the general fund.
Okay.
So if you're looking on page 30, and you'll see there's a line item called stormwater that has a $137,000 budget next year. That's approximately what your stormwater fee generates in a year. So the budget is comparable to the fee generation.
On page 30,
Yes, sir, where you have your year-over-year expenditure summary. And stormwater is almost directly
Yeah,
across
I
from
see
the
it.
page number.
okay. Okay, other questions? If not, we'll take it under advisement, and go to our work session on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a first time you see the document, and this year, this happens to be what it is. So I encourage you to take it home, make questions you have, if you want to call me or Melanie in between the time we meet, or give us a heads up on, what it is you want in-depth information about. If it's trying to clearly understand the difference in last year's budget, we can be more than happy to give you much, detail.
And that's what I'm saying, and inside of the budget, when we project an increase in generation of revenue from your tax rate, there's a chart that shows valuation, rate, collection percentage, how we got it for general fund, for your general rate, your gully rate, your MSD rate, everything that we put in the budget that we could support with a chart, with the value, with an external source like the Consumer Price Index, all of that's in the back. And that's why we referenced page numbers throughout the manager's comments, is so you could say, oh, I'd like to see how they calculated that, and then you flip, and there's the chart or the external document from the state that supports why we had to change a retirement contribution, or why we may have changed the cost on the health insurance.
Also starting on page 31,
Okay.
we have significant changes.
Right, for each department, we've done a sheet, so it'll say what they've accomplished this year, but also what drove any changes in their budget, so that you can say, oh, that's Marguerite's budget went up because she's got Glover Park in there, and that'll be noted in the bottom. And if it's a budget that's fairly flat, it'll say there's no significant change in this budget.
I would, Mayor, members of council, I would suggest, I think we tentatively sent out a question about what days you all could possibly meet next week for a budget workshop, and I think it was agreed that most people said Monday.
Monday.
So it might be appropriate to try to agree to get a time so you can recess to it, would be my suggestion.
Well, can we just close now and open again?
Well, you'd have to advertise.
Got time to advertise for a meeting? Which we don't.
I mean,
We do?
well,
We can do that.
but I don't know, how are you going to determine, you got to do it between now and tomorrow?
Yeah, she
I mean-
says we can do it.
It takes 48 hours.
Right, if they set the meeting tonight, I have time for Monday.
But I'm thinking the mayor's saying he don't want to decide tonight.
No, that's not what I said. What I said
I'm
is we can close tonight, advertise for a meeting on Monday, still have a legitimate meeting Monday morning.
Yeah.
But a simple thing, though, of course, call a recess now, recess Monday morning at 9 o'clock and start again. There's Chair, a motion we recess till 9 o'clock Monday morning.
So move.
It's been moved and second, we recess until Monday morning, where we'll meet over in the town hall chambers, the conference room. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor indicate so by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. Accordingly, we'll meet there. Thank you. Thank you, Leonard. Okay, with all that said and done, on the agenda, we're down now to council comments. Are there comments? Mr. Taylor?
No comments at this time, Mayor.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I'd like to say, Melanie, in particular, this is probably the most simplistic setup I've seen, be able to follow what we're doing with our budget, where the money's coming from, and where it's going. And I thank you for doing this.
I have a feeling if you went back and looked at Pitt County, the city of Gastonia, or Monroe County, Florida, you'd see some similarities in the documents.
Okay. Ms. Hinton?
My concern is that by this time last year, we had about 4 or 5 sessions on the budget. And tonight, this is the first time we've seen this in a different format. And when you see a $1 million increase, it's startling. So, yeah.
I think we can explain the $1 million increase, and that, but we will do it.
I too want to thank the staff. This is very easy to follow, and yes, it is the first time that we're seeing it, but it's a lot more information than we've been given in the past, so thank you.
And I have to compliment the staff too. This is excellent craftsmanship for the budget. Unlike the other things we've seen before that was sort of smoke and mirrors. Okay, all that being said and done, thank everybody for coming. Glad you're here. And we'll see everybody Monday, I hope. Mr. Chair, here motion we adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded we adjourn. Is there any discussion?
Are you adjourning?
There being none, all in favor, indicate so by saying yes.
Are we
Right,
adjourning or
don't
recess?
do
Oh, I'm
that.
sorry, recess.
Don't do that.
I'm sorry. Thank you. We adjourn so much, we seldom ever recess, so we're gonna call a recess then until Monday. We are at recess.